So welcome everybody to the February 2025 Cloud Cafe. Can you believe it? Um, so today we're going to be talking about an incredibly important topic and one that affects a lot of our lives in the room. Well, everybody really, obviously. We're talking about the epidemic of violence against women and girls that exists today in all communities. Before everybody joined, Lynn was talking about the fact that she was working on with an organization that was trying to tackle violence against women in the late 1970s, and that she really thought that by 2025 we wouldn't be having to have conversations about this, and yet here we are still today. So data suggests that 1 in 3 women in the United Kingdom will be victims of gender-based violence at some time in their lives. And I'm sure that that's not even the real figures because so much gender-based violence goes unreported completely. Obviously, there's a range of crimes which disproportionately affect women and girls, and this includes rape, sexual violence, stalking, harassment, domestic abuse, modern slavery, and so-called honor killings or honor abuse. And this is only that the list of things like that is only getting longer as we see things like revenge porn, as we see things. I mean, stalking was mentioned there, but that's only very recently been actually criminalized within the criminal system. So, and something that affects a lot of people. So in this session, we're going to be talking to 2 fantastic guests who are women who are working in the area to support and prevent these kinds of crimes. And they're going to be talking to us a little bit about what they do and introducing the topic of gender-based violence for us. So first off, we have Nikki Courtney, who is actually from the Gloucester Night Angels, but is very au fait with the Stroud area, I believe, because she was trained there. So Nikki, if you'd like to kick us off and tell us a bit about the organisation that you work with and the work that you do.
Yes.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here today representing Chrissy Lowry. She's the founder of the Night Angels. The Night Angels was formed in December 2023 in Stroud, and they've been going strong, supporting vulnerable women in the area. Gloucester was launched in October 24. Between Stroud and Gloucester, we have 55 Night Angels. That's including Leeds and Safe Space Haven ladies. We've attended over 250 incidents between the 2 counties and out patrolling every Friday and Saturday, fully equipped with bags containing first aid kits, report books, oximeters, temp meters, blood reading, Naxalin, AED, homeless packs, foil blankets. We have sanitary packs. The list is endless, to be honest. So each angel carries a bag on duty. They've all had an induction and filled out a pack which covers their safety, the objectives, the training, operations, pledges, and codes of conduct, etc. So, whilst on patrol personally, I have witnessed many vulnerable females requiring assistance in both Stroud and Gloucester. It can be anything really from a reassuring chat to administering first aid to assisting with transport home, giving out flip-flops if they broke a shoe, etc., or in the worst case scenario, calling an ambulance. I've also personally, whilst on my training in Stroud, dealt with several cases of young males worse for wear, or a couple of them were actually unconscious on our arrival, which we've made sure that they receive the same care and attention that we give the females. Just because they're males, it doesn't make any difference. If they need our assistance while on patrol or duty, we are there for them. Some evenings we can be out from 11 p.m. at night until 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, all depending on the outcome of the night. We support events such as Pride, Chalfest, sorry, Holy Gaza Trust, etc. We also educate youngsters in schools and colleges on how to stay safe. Once Gloucester is completely refurbished, we will have a safe haven for outreach, sex workers, the homeless, and also we're looking at public transport patrolling the railway. That'll be coming soon also. For women fleeing domestic violence, the shop is where the safe haven will be. It's there for them to use. They can come inside and the shutters will be pulled down. And once we get them upstairs and out of the back end and safely to a refuge or a place of safety. This is the last phase of Gloucester, which will be complete when we secure more funding. We still need volunteers for both shops and both areas, and we also need both more angels. Chrissy's looking to move on to Cirencester, Swindon, and Wiltshire next. And in the bigger picture, she's hoping and she would really love to open her own refuge. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Chrissy and the Angels to thank you for your kind donation for our advanced first aid training. Donations are very important as we use them for training, uniforms and supplies. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nikki, for kicking us off. It's really important work that you guys do. And I remember being out in Leeds when you just mentioned the Leeds group up there when I used to live up there, and definitely taking, I mean, luckily it wasn't anything serious, but it was a broken heel and taking a pair of very welcome flip-flops. But I think one of the things that you just mentioned around gender not being a question, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yes.
For someone who is, for an organisation that are about violence against women and gender-based violence, for them to be able to look beyond gender and support people who are in need whenever they're in need is really amazing. I think like so many organisations, finding funding can be so difficult, and the work that you're obviously doing to get funding and being able to expand the services is really amazing. But I'm sure Stroud Greens will love to continue supporting the organisation and help you find more funding pots and things. And hopefully with the new government, there'll be more availability of those kinds of things to support these really vital services. So thank you so much for kicking us off.
You're welcome.
So our next presenter is Ellen Perrott, who's from Stroud Women's Refuge. So Ellen, I'll hand over to you and you can tell us a bit about your organisation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. I've learnt some things there that I didn't know myself, so thank you for that. So in terms of who we are, so we are Stroud Women's Refuge. Our kind of other name that we sometimes go by is Stroud Beresford Group, but that's kind of our organisation name, so some of you might know us as that. So we have existed for 40 years-ish. So I think initially one of our trustees was going to come to this meeting, but unfortunately she can't make it. But she has been involved in the build up of our services over the whole time that we've been in existence. So she is quite a force to be part of, really, and it's really good to see her and the kind of work that she's been involved in as part of us. So we are currently the only refuge in Gloucestershire. So what that means is that we have 2 properties in Stroud that look like houses, that are used as houses and safe accommodation for people that are fleeing domestic abuse. So they are for women and children. So we take single women and we take women and children too. And they are a safe place for people to get support when they need to leave high-risk relationships. So just on the mention of that, GDAS, the bigger kind of organisation across Gloucestershire have places of safety. So they have kind of independent housing units, but we are kind of technically the only refuge kind of provision that Gloucestershire has. So we are only small. We have a small staff team of 7, 8 of us. I keep losing count because I can't keep track of what's going on. But we work in refuge and in the community as well. So what I'll do is kind of go on to explain about the work that we do. So we offer kind of what we call kind of community work. So that means that we support women on a one-to-one basis that live in the Stroud district. That can be women that are experiencing high-risk domestic abuse now and need support either to stay safe where they are because they want to stay in their own home, or to leave the county or further afield, and we help them find refuge base kind of outside of Gloucestershire. We have IDVAs, who are independent domestic violence advisors. So I am a trained IDVA, and we have 2 other trained IDVAs as well. So we're specifically trained to work with victims where there is high risk domestic abuse, and understand kind of the risks and the safety aspects around that. All our work in the community with women on the one-to-one is based on safety and risk to ensure that we are making sure that people are safe where they are, or if they aren't safe and we can't make them safe, to provide them with the choices that they have in terms of safer accommodation away from where they are. We also support a lot of women to understand a little bit more about the criminal and family court processes, because a lot of women don't always choose to report in terms of reporting to the police, and that is absolutely their choice, and we would never, you know, force anybody to go down that route. But what we can do is just let people know what that might look like, so that people can make informed choices about what they want to do. And then we also obviously around family court support with what that also might look like and what that might entail. So although not legally trained, we provide emotional support because we recognise that at times perpetrator behaviour could peak when there are things to do with criminal and family court, because perpetrators will change their behaviours based on how much control they think they may have. We also provide group community work. So we oh no, there's things popping up and that just took my brain away from where I was going then. So we provide a group for women that have experienced domestic abuse but are no longer in an abusive relationship, and we help them recognise what abusive behaviours look like. We help them recognise the experiences that they have had, and we build peer support around them, because we recognise how important it is for women to have other people that they can reach out to and talk to other than us as professionals, so that they can build friendships and relationships in the community. So we provide that as well. And we also go and speak to young people too. So we do that as well, about what healthy relationships should look like, what unhealthy relationships look like too, and where people can get support if they need it. But I suppose the main thing that we are known for is our refuge provision. I always assume that people know what a refuge is, but just in case nobody knows what one is, we have 2 properties. They look like houses. We make them look like houses so that hopefully we blend into the background. What we do inside a refuge is provide all kinds of support that people might need. So that is from your basics of trying to find financial support, applying for benefits, etc., parenting support, routines, boundaries with children, anything like that. But then also the experiences that they've had around domestic abuse and how to stay safe going forwards. And then we look at moving on, housing, moving into accommodation of their own, and trying to set them up from a life, well, set them up for a life away from kind of the risks that they had posed to them before. So it's an awful lot of work in terms of what we do. We try and provide a holistic package for people so that they are supported all round, really. We do children's work if we have children come into refuge. So we have mums come in with children, and we support the children either as groups or as one-to-one as well, to help the children kind of understand what they may have experienced in their home, but also to equip children with the understanding of what healthy adult relationships and their own relationships should look like. So that starts from friendships up until kind of intimate relationships, depending on the age of the children. So we definitely, we do all of that package. And I think just reflecting on kind of what was said earlier, we recognise that domestic abuse is a gendered kind of crime as such. We recognise there is a high number of women that experience domestic abuse, and it won't always be, like I said, reported or even spoke about to anybody outside of the home. So we do get referrals for refuge where women have never openly spoken about what has happened to them, or the first person that they are speaking to about it. So we recognise that all the statistics in the world, and I have some, probably don't actually provide us with the true picture of what women do experience, because still where we are now, it is still quite hidden. It is still a subject that sometimes people don't want to talk about and don't want to face. And so what I always say, and Nikki, this is probably the same for you, is that the more we talk about it and the more we say it does exist, the more people hopefully will say, this is what I heard today, this is what we were talking about today. And if you make it a non-taboo subject, hopefully more people will be able to reach out for any support should they need it. And that's what we're trying to achieve, I think, really. So
Yeah,
that's us.
Oh, sorry, didn't unmute myself then. Brilliant, amazing work, obviously. Desperately sad that it's needed, but amazing that it's a service that is provided. I think in both cases, both of you have talked about
Sorry.
having like strong
Pressing
female
buttons
founders.
there, but-
Oh, hi Robert, if you could just mute
Yeah,
yourself,
that's
sorry.
right. I was pressing buttons there. Sorry about
No problem. But yeah, having strong independent female founders who have seen a gap in a service that is really vital and needed is an amazing thing for them to have created something, a safe space for women, or a space that or a service that goes out to provide what the angels are doing out on the streets. So there are a couple of questions in the chat. I always say that I'm not going to, and then I do talk about the last 14 years of Tory rule and how these services have been starved across the board, and how we need to provide proper funding to these services. And I hope that the Labour government will consider doing that, but that's one of the big issues, and why sort of charity organisations have to fill that gap, because it's like a service that the government isn't providing properly, which is not very good in my opinion. So I'm going to invite some of our audience to ask their questions, so they can unmute themselves and ask the questions. If either of you would like to respond to the question, then just sort of go for it. But if you don't have an answer to the question, then also it's just something for us to think about as a group. Like you say, the more we talk about these things, the more we can try to understand, and the more we break down the taboos that surround these issues. So Barbara, I think you are our first question.
Thank you, Jenny. Ellen, thank you, and to you as well, Nikki, of course, for your presentation. Ellen, I know you do amazing work on helping people once they have suffered abuse and violence, and that's tremendous. I wondered if you had anything you wanted to say, either because you're doing it or because you have opinions, about the prevention of violence against women and girls. Maybe you have things you do, or if not, are there things you'd like to see done?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of prevention, what I suppose our role in prevention is our work that we do with children and young people, in terms of trying to help young people understand maybe some of the messaging that they get from things like social media, etc., and try and help and support them to understand that some of those behaviours that are portrayed aren't healthy. So I, just as a kind of understanding of where I come from in terms of the work that I've done, I come from an early years background, so I feel quite passionately personally about the earlier the intervention, the better potentially the outcome going forwards. In terms of other kind of set perpetrator work, because I think there's a question a bit further down, but it kind of links. There are perpetrator programmes across Gloucestershire. So there are programmes for people that understand that they have displayed unhealthy behaviours towards people. They are lengthy programmes, but they do exist, and they are run by specifically trained people to do them, to help people understand why their behaviour is harmful, and they're run alongside support for the person that is also being harmed. So they've been running. I've been in Gloucestershire, working in Gloucestershire for sort of 7 or so years, and they've been running as long as I've known in this area. So I think there are those aspects. Nikki, I don't know if you've got anything else you wanted to add.
Well, I know for a fact that something was put in place 11 years ago on my behalf, for my ex-husband. He had to go on a prevention course and own his behaviour course and stuff like that. So I know there was something. I believe it was put in place not long after Holly Gazzard. What happened there. I think Gloucestershire Police realised that there was a big problem and they weren't addressing it. So I think that came hand in hand not long after the Holly Gazzard thing, because I think it was about 11 years ago that I was subject to this, and it was then. So it's been going about 11 years.
Was it helpful?
I don't know, because hand in hand with that came an injunction. So I don't have anything to do with my ex-partner. But I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks both, and thanks Barbara for your question. And I have just put the link into the Holly Gazzard website, because I'm pretty sure I actually got pushed something recently on Instagram, and they've just launched like a really big campaign, this charity, and I was looking on it and it looks like they've got an app, Holly Guard app.
The Holly Guard, yeah.
So yeah, amazing. So thanks for mentioning that, and I've popped it in the chat, everyone, so if you want to have a read. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Elizabeth? Are you there, Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It was a question for Nikki, just about the women that she finds that she works with on the streets, and I was just wondering whether some of the women find themselves on the street as a result of domestic abuse, or whether it's more to do with their own vulnerability anyway, in which case I'm sure they would be subject to abuse anyway. But I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about that, Nikki.
A lot of the women that are actually on the street are a lot of them are through their own alcohol abuse, drug abuse, whether they've been involved in any domestic violence. I wouldn't know. We don't go that far into it with them. We're there for a couple of hours, Fridays and Saturday evenings. That's why the safe haven is so important to get set up, because that'll be somewhere for these ladies to go during the day. There'll be somebody there of an evening. Obviously, on the weekends, night angels will be there to take them to the safe haven. But a lot is drink and alcohol abuse, which again, people are crying out for help for this kind of, it's abuse, isn't it? It's all abuse, but it's a different kind of abuse. Yes, there's a lot of street workers there's a lot of sex workers, especially, I'm not sure about Stroud, I never really saw any in Stroud, but there's definitely a lot of sex workers in Gloucester. So yes, it's all different kinds of vulnerabilities out there, to be honest. And obviously then you get your local, I've gone out and got drunk, falling over girls and ladies that just kind of need assistance to get them home safely.
Thanks, Nikki. I guess that's almost in itself part of like prevention of potential risk of like girls going on nights out who might have too many drinks or whatever, and you guys helping them get home is actually part of a prevention of any risk of getting into a bad situation.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Elizabeth, for your question. So the next question comes from Adrian. Adrian, if you're there.
Yeah. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Nikki and Ellen. Thank you very much indeed for your presentations. It's not in the chat, but as Jenny said it, I would like to wholeheartedly endorse her comments about this should be state-supported work. It's part of being in a civilized society. And I was just wondering, Nikki, do you get financial support from the owners of the late night establishments, so both the pubs and the nightclub?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
You don't. So the causes of the trouble don't contribute to the causes that they help create. I think there's an argument there for something like the gambling levy, that
Yeah.
if you're running an establishment that's open after, I don't know, midnight, then you should be expected to pay in a levy to fund support services.
I will check that, but it's nothing that I'm aware of, no.
Cool. And then the other thing, and not so much a question, but although I misspelt his name, Gareth Kitchen, the Green Party's rep on the Police and Crime Commissioner, his report that I saw this week has got some really shocking statistics in it, including 20% of the reported crime in the whole county is to do with domestic abuse, which seems horrendous figure. And I didn't know whether you've got comments on why that seems such a high figure, and is it increasing?
I mean, from my perspective, it's sometimes good to see numbers go up like that, because actually are more people now reporting, and that's potentially where we are, or is it getting worse and therefore there is just more of it to report? The other thing I know is that the police have had and are getting to get more domestic abuse matters training. So they are specifically, and it's been sort of UK wide, but I know Gloucestershire Police are definitely having this as well. It is specific domestic abuse training to support officers to approach domestic abuse incidents with the kind of care and caution that they should potentially be approached with. So it might be that there is also now an increase in people feeling confident to report because of the reaction that is given when they do report. So sometimes, although it's horrible to hear rates go up, it could be encouraging that rates are going up in terms of reporting, which to me is encouraging to hear. But it's definitely something that isn't going away. I mean, that 20%, even if you look across UK-based figures, that is about right. I think as a UK-based figure, you know, it's about 17-18% of all crime is domestic abuse based. So it is the same across the board, I think. I don't know if that answers anything.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about the uptake in reporting, but yeah, it did just horrendous. But thank you both very much for what you both do. Incredibly useful and needed services. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. So I think we've got a couple more questions. So one from Val's iPad. If you want to ask, and I did just in response to this drop an end violence against women.org.uk latest data link.
Okay.
So just in case you guys don't know it off the top of your head, there is some information in the link. Thanks, Val.
Thank you. What I will say, actually, about 25 years ago, I think the prosecution rate for these cases, well, for rape was like 1 in 5, which always seems so low. So a lot of cases brought to court must fail, and that's the problem. But anyway, yeah, interesting. I'll look at that.
I don't know if either of the speakers want to just come in on prosecution rates, then feel free to share any comments.
I don't mind adding something, Nikki, if you don't mind me keep talking. Sorry.
No,
I don't really like the sound of my own voice, so this is horrible. So I mean, in terms of just the work that we do, in terms of outreach and refuge and the people that we support that actually do report to the police, it's such a lengthy process to get from reporting to a conviction. It takes a lot of emotional energy, a lot of physical power as well to do that. And I think that sometimes it's too difficult to do, especially in the terms of rape and sexual violence, because it is a very personal subject, which some women don't want to disclose, full stop. But they also don't want to keep talking about once it's happened. So I think there's two things, you know, people not having the headspace to go through all the processes that are needed to get from reporting to conviction, and actually in terms of police kind of processes, evidence, you know, rape is really quite tricky to prove, and I know that sounds like it shouldn't be anymore, but it still is. So I think conviction rates for rape are low, and I think they will remain low for a long time, unfortunately. Yeah.
You're muted, Jenny.
She's lost her button.
So while we're waiting for Jenny to find her button, Lynn, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just gonna take on Jenny's role, Alan.
I did it.
so-
Sorry.
okay.
I'm so sorry. I could not get to the screen that I needed there. It was just computer was saying no. I don't know if anyone remembers that comedy show, but there you go. Okay, thank you for Lynn and Alan stepping in then. I also just wanted to make a point about the prosecution process stuff. I know in the US and in the UK, there's like huge scandals because rape kits were actually left in warehouses untested. So it wasn't even that, you know, the process is so complex, like Ellen was saying, and is so difficult for victims to get through, but also like the backup of rape kits, there was like huge scandals on it. Where they were just going untested for years and years and years. And so these rape cases would just, like, the victims would just think that there was no progress in the case, but actually it hadn't even begun the process of testing the rape kits. So I think there's actually quite a few interesting documentaries on that if anybody is interested in it. Okay, so we've got one more question from Lynn and then Kate. Lynn, if you want to go first.
Yeah, Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Ellen and Nikki, for coming to speak to us tonight. Before the program started, when we were in the waiting for people to arrive, I was talking about how in the mid 1970s, late 1970s, I was involved in the Women's Rape Prevention Ride Service, and we had a fleet of vehicles from the university, and we used those with volunteers to provide transportation to women at night. And in some ways it was very effective. Other ways it could be abused. Like, we had one woman who used us as her nightly taxi service. But for the most part, it was a really good way. It provided security for women on the streets at night. And at the time as well, the domestic violence became like, people really took that on as an issue and started organizing and establishing refuge houses and, local organizations, a statewide coalition, a national coalition. And I guess I'm moving off the question I put in the chat, actually, but I am really curious about why there's only one refuge in Stroud, and it doesn't seem like there are many refuge programs across the country. Were the programs? Did you have programs in the past, and they've just disappeared, or is that not a movement that you've had here, like we've had in the United States, where it's been really strong? And I think it is still very, very strong. And in some ways, it's a Band-Aid approach, obviously, to having a refuge program instead of really dealing with the core issues. But I just would like to hear a bit about why we've only got one program in Gloucestershire, and what's going on with that, what's happening nationally. And then also, if both of you could talk a bit about my original question, which is the whole the influence, that what's happening in our society today, where we can elect someone who's been credibly accused 14 times of rape. He's elected president of the United States. We have people like Andrew Tate, who really play an outsized role with young men. And it seems like culture, at least maybe in the United States, I don't know about here in the UK so much, but it's becoming much more macho, much more male dominated, much more like angry, aggressive culture. And I just would like to hear your take on that, and what do you think is happening, and what do you think should be done about it? So that's my very long part question. Sorry about that.
Okay, so it was like the general movement of like women's rights and protection for women, and then also the bit about sort of social media and new age influences on male violence and gender-based violence. So
yeah, and I'm particularly interested in how violence against women is being dealt with here in the UK, because it seems like it's just not got the same kind of strength and power and organization that I see in the United States, and that I was involved with in the United States for many, many years.
Thanks.
Just in terms of kind of from a refuge perspective, I suppose, about why is there only one. I've only been involved with the refuge for 7 years, but it's been there for about 40, I think. And like I said, one of our trustees has been involved for the whole of the time it's existed. We still exist because at one point the decision was chosen to become a charity. And I think that's how they survived. That is my understanding of what happened, because I think there were other refuges. There definitely were. Gloucester, I'm sure, had one. So did Cheltenham, potentially. But with refuge comes money. Unfortunately, we are expensive because we are a support service. So we are technically kind of a supported housing project, which means we are quite expensive to run. So I suppose at the time, if the funding wasn't there for those refuges to continue as a support service, I think that is why they no longer exist. But we became a charity, and therefore our funding streams are slightly different to other places that may be completely funded by sort of government funding, etc. So we diversified in that way, and that's how we've managed to survive, I think. So that's why only we exist, unfortunately.
But women's
Nikki, I
aid,
don't know. Yeah.
women's
Sorry.
aid,
Well,
women's
Women's
aid.
Aid accredited, yeah, but we don't get money sort of from Women's Aid as such, or from we get some money now because of the domestic abuse bill and the changes in legislation, because there are now can't my words have just suddenly disappeared. You know, there has to be provision of refuge, so we do get funding for that. But a lot of our funding comes from other streams too, because what we don't want to do is lose what we've got. So if we completely depend on one pot of funding, we could disappear. And I think that's potentially what had happened in the past, when there was huge amounts of money for domestic abuse services. And I think when they were taken away, the statutory funding was taken away, those refuges disappeared, and we don't want that to happen. So that's why we have lots of different ways of being funded. But yeah, that's how we work. But every refuge is different across the UK. So some will disappear, some will come back, because some are funded by local authority. And if that local authority money doesn't get to the local authority, because it doesn't come through the various streams, they won't have the money to run. So yeah. But in terms of social media, I would like to turn it off, please. I don't know what Nikki thinks.
Yes, I totally agree with you. There's so much peer pressure coming from social media. The different platforms as well. TikTok's taken over now with, yeah, and I know some of it is banter and some of it is like play acting, but not everybody sees that. You know, it is a boost to women. Yeah, there's so many platforms that are not monitored, shall I say. And I don't know if you guys realise, but I'm not from Gloucester. I'm actually from Wales, originally. And we have refuges in Wales, but they're all the ones that I know of in Wales. They're supported by Women's Aid. I'm not really up on the Gloucestershire, but yes.
I think adding to what Nikki said about social media and the messages that are put out, I think, you know, the prime example is Andrew Tate. And I think what comes with some some social media influence is this term influencer, isn't it? And I think what they show is that they have money, they have fast cars, they have influence. And I think if you are a young person and you're a little bit lost and you don't have people guiding you the right way, why wouldn't you want that lifestyle? And if the other part of that comes with it is the derogatory use of language towards women, of treatment towards women, unfortunately some young people will think that that's okay, you know. But we do work with young people, and some young people absolutely hate it and they don't like it at all, and other people will argue why that is a nice powerful place to be. And that's the kind of thing that we do try and tackle when we go and do young people's work, you know, that influence of social media and how that isn't real life, but it becomes real for a lot of people. Yeah.
Thanks both for those answers. And yeah, I think you're very right. It's like whether it's well-meaning or banter or jokes, like that doesn't always come across from a screen. So, and it's how people take it away with them and how they see those things. I mean, when we were younger, it was like seeing famous people on television or on music videos and things, and you see how, but now it's like the next layer down, and it's just like it's so much wider spread and so many more people have access to it that it's just impossible to police. Thanks for your question, Lynn. So I'm just running through the questions. Yes. Just want to have something you want to say? Oh, sorry. Francis, if that's the correct way of saying it. Did you say Francis? Hi.
Alan's just mentioned some of the work they do with young people. I did wonder how much opportunity they had to go into schools and talk to sort of sixth form level, or maybe, you know, 16-year-olds. talk about their work so that that age group can understand some of the pitfalls they can fall into, because, you know, forewarned is forearmed, isn't it? And often I think young people are very naive in some ways. They think they're very worldly wise, but actually they don't understand how their behaviour can put them at risk. So I wondered what opportunities Nikki or Ellen have had to go into schools and talk about their work as a sort of starter for discussions within the school network.
I haven't personally been into schools myself, but the angels, we have certain angels for certain jobs. I know they've gone into Stroud College recently and Gloucester College just before Christmas. So we do try and get into these places. Obviously, we have to be invited to schools. School's a little bit different to college because of the structure of it. But we, you know, it's February now, and we've already visited the two main colleges in the area, and we will foresee that going forward to schools and anywhere else we can.
Yeah, I agree with Nikki. You know, we go into sixth form kind of plus age groups, which you could say is a little late. But you know, like Nikki said as well, we have to be invited. Schools, it's tricky because they have got a lot to get through in terms of curriculum anyway, without us having to take up their time. But we go in and we talk about healthy relationships, the influence of social media, online relationships, you know, all those things, because I do fully, like Nikki said, believe that the more we can talk to young people, the more we're spreading that message, you know, across the board of people that are going to grow up into having adult relationships. And I think when I did a bit of reading not long ago in the summer about kind of domestic abuse and violence against women and girls, and I think from what I read, the common theme was that they thought domestic abuse would go away because they thought it was an age-based thing, and they thought that perpetrators would get to a point where it would die out almost. But they have realised that perpetrators are getting younger, and we have to recognise that in the work that we do, I think, yeah.
Absolutely, thanks. Thanks for the question, Francis, and thanks for answering. I think all the rest of the questions in there, or all the rest of the stuff in the chat is comments rather than questions. So I'm going to do a little summary, and then what I usually do is ask our speakers just if there's one thing that you want everyone to take away from this conversation, what would it be? So you guys just have a think about that. I'll do a little summary, and then we'll come back to you for the final word. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for having this conversation. I think it's really important that we continue to do this. And like with so many of the topic areas that are discussed at the Cloud Cafes, the changes really happen at your kitchen table. And so like talking to your children, young people in your family, old people in your family, you know, gender-based violence doesn't care about your age. It can affect anybody at any time of their life. It can come because of some big issue has happened in your life, or it can just happen because of no reason at all. So look out for your friends, look out for your family, and signpost them to the amazing services that there are out there. Hopefully nobody, you know, will ever have to use a women's refuge, but anybody could have to at the same time. So it's amazing that we have these services available. Talk to your MP about getting more funding for these services. It's absolutely vital. And this is the kind of work that we do as political activists in the Stroud area, and obviously in the Gloucestershire area as well. So keep pushing for more, keep pushing for better, and make sure that you check in on the people that you love, because like I say, it can affect anybody at any time. So to our two speakers, if you just want to give us a 30-second, take this home. If you didn't listen to anything that we've said for this whole time, take this one thing home with you. What would you like to say? Ellen, I'll go to you first.
I just also want to pick, there was a message in there from from Kate about managing an ISBA service. So I just wanted to give her
Oh,
a
sorry.
big thank you too, because she's obviously part of what we do. I would just like to say, you know, the thing I've taken from this is just that I appreciate everybody's time in listening to and thinking about this kind of subject. It's not a subject that some people want to involve themselves in or know more about, because sometimes it's hard to know what to do when somebody discloses to you or talks to you about it. So I think, like you said, the more people that openly talk about it, the better, really. And I think anybody that works with people will come across domestic abuse. I echo the fact that it could touch anybody's life at any time. So it's got no barriers, basically. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Nikki, if you want to say last few words.
Yeah, I agree with Ellen. Like she said, as you know, we have to talk about this. We have to make sure that people listen to us when we talk about it. We also have to listen to people. We have to listen to what their needs are. Safety in numbers is always paramount for me as working alongside other angels. And yeah, it's just keeping people safe.
Thanks, Nikki, and thanks, Ellen, for giving us your time this evening and talking to us about a topic that is so vital and so important. I just want to remind people that the government is reorganizing our local government, and devolution is probably going to happen. And when county councils or district councils fund services like these, we need to tell them to keep funding them whenever the changes are made. So if there's a public consultation, or if you're a councillor, because I know there's probably quite a few town, parish, district councillors on this call, prioritize these kinds of services and make sure that you're given a voice to victims of domestic violence in the changes that are inevitably probably going to come. So thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Thanks for all your questions and your comments. It makes it a much more diverse and interesting conversation when we have your input. So thank you so much to our two speakers, again, for giving us your time and for stepping in at the last minute, Nikki. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we hope to see you again. And everybody keep an eye out for what the Night Angels and Stroud Refuge are doing. And we'll see you again in March.